Welcome to KIMEcast, where we break through and cut the BS in sports medicine, rehabilitation, and sports performance, and talk about how things really work. Welcome to KIMEcast. Russ Dunning, Tony Mikla. So I wanted to brief you guys on some cool stuff that we're doing as we kind of get kicked off here. And one of the things we wanted to do for quite a long time was to launch an entity or a nonprofit that would really support the development of youth sports. We've been in this field for 20 years now, and we've been seeing athletes hurt, injured. A lot of times it's the worst thing's ever happened to them at that age for sure, or sometimes it continues to be the worst thing's ever happened to them, to tear an ACL or to sprain an ankle. It's the reason that I'm here as a therapist, is I sprained my ankle in high school, and I was devastated, lost 4 or 5 games of my senior year, and I was so frustrated with how long it was taking, and that I felt like I'd be getting better faster, and I was seeing my athletic trainer, and I was seeing a PT, and it was still like, there's got to be more I could do. And this has been my driving force for my entire life in this field, is to get those answers to people better. So we've solved that problem as far as there's better ways to rehab and provide that on a daily basis to our people. The piece that we see the need for is to actually get in front of these injuries, get out in front, look at athletes and say, is there ways to prevent some of these things? Now, we all talk about injury prevention. It's been like a big theme for a long period of time, but it's very, very gray.
Super gray. Poorly, yeah.
Yeah, it's very poorly understood. There are some things that we do know to be true, that if you get stronger and if you work on your plyometrics, it definitely reduces risk of injury.
Absolutely.
So we know that to be true, but that's still a very gray statement. So everyone go out and get in the gym, get stronger, and do plyos, and you'll get better. That's literally what the knowledge is. There are a little bit more levels of depth, but it's not that specific.
Yeah.
And so we've been on a mission, obviously from the beginning, to make athletes better, but specifically over the last couple of years, looking at if there's some more objective findings that could give us better insight to this. So years ago, we started with the functional movement screen 20 years ago. That really proved not to be objectively a great tool for this. Like, it doesn't do it as well as we'd all hope. It has a great purpose. I love the FMS, but not necessarily for injury prevention identification purposes. We've looked at other types of testing as far as like strength testing and combine testing, if you will, through cone agility, pro agility, 5-10-5, things like that, as indicators, and we don't see a whole lot of clear data around that either. In talking with guys, this is what the NFL Combine is all about. It's going to be identify injury. And what they find as the only 2 factors that really are critical are range of motion around the hip. It's actually the most important indicators of injury likelihood in the NFL season. Other than that, all of the tests they do, they have a difficult time really putting parameters around it. So that's at the pro sports level. We're interested highly at the youth level. That's where we spend so much of our time and the patients we work with in this kind of high school age group. So the stats around there are pretty spectacular.
What I think is really important to note is when you're talking with a pro athlete, you have an asset to a team that's worth, several $1 million, if not $100 million.
Sure.
When you're talking about a 14-year-old soccer athlete, the only person they're worth anything to is their parents. So it's the only two people that care about that person, unfortunately. And hopefully...
And their coach, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully your coach and your physical therapist, and maybe your doctor. But anyways... Studying this hasn't really had like the type of funding. That's why we know so much about pro athletes, but not enough about, the 15-year-old that plays soccer.
Yeah, I think so. On that note on research, I'll just jump in real quick because it's a super important thing about this. Whenever you read like health studies or looking at health research, 2 things have to be good. One, the testing battery, the methods have to be solid, but you need a population to test, and you need you have to have as much as you can have a blind study, or at least gather a large enough group of people to see some trend lines. And most of the studies are done on college campuses, rightfully so. That's where the money is, and they can get grad students to do the research. And then they usually use college athletes or college students to be the subjects. And they might get 30 subjects or 50 subjects on a large type of study, which that's not large though. If you look at like what a real research study is, it's in the end should be over 1,000, 2,000 people. So all that being said, funding, time, subject number are all a factor. We see most of the research done in the college level or the pro level because they get better at those two of those categories, but usually not subjects. So Russ has some good information here on what's going on with like high school sports.
Yeah, just recently, like just in 2023, the annual meeting for the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons put on a wonderful sports injuries data report that lasted several years. And I mean, this is fairly new data coming out. And finally, we're able to understand injury incidence. And so the word incidence is looking at how often do these injuries occur. And for the total of conglomerate of all high school athletes, the average number is, this sounds a little mathematical, but it's around 2.5 injuries per 1,000 athlete exposures. An athlete exposure is either a practice or a game. What that boils down to, that little number statistic, is 1 out of 2 athletes. So if you have 2 athletes, one of them is going to get injured in the next training year. That consists of whether one sport athlete, 2 sport athlete, but 1 out of 2. Now to break that down further, so I'm going to say 1 out of 2, 50% of all athletes will get injured in the next calendar year. The breakdown further goes, about half of those injuries are contact injuries. The other half are non-contact injuries. Okay. Now within that makeup as well, about half of them are mild injuries. About maybe 30 to 40% of them are moderate injuries, and about 7 to 10% are really severe injuries, something like a ligament tear, meniscus tear, something that needs surgery or some type of surgeon to do an intervention. So that's the breakup. So when we're looking at incidents, if you looked at all high school athletes, you're looking at the team and you're literally breaking in half and say, you 50% will get injured. And what's not entirely known, we can philosophically say, if you get stronger, you're going to be better. And if you get more reactive and more elastic and more athletic in these ways, you're going to be better. To what extent and where are the thresholds that we should be, where we should put? And so studying the precise correlation of performance metrics with that incidence rate is extremely important. And can we move the number? Can we change that incident rate of 1 out of 2 athletes will get injured to something that looks a little bit different? Now, the Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons went in to further clarify the main sports. So for boys, really quickly, it's football, soccer, wrestling, basketball, and baseball. And then for the girls' sports, soccer, basketball, volleyball, softball, and then believe it or not, wrestling made the number 5 mark on the girls' list.
Cheers on the list, huh?
Yeah, that's kind of surprised me. So I'll take a deeper look, but you think so because I see more female cheer than
cheer's
female
actually the number
wrestling.
one most riskiest sport in the country.
Yeah, I couldn't agree
That's
more.
been published many times, but I wonder if it wasn't included in the study.
Yeah, I don't know this.
Then the rate would have just been higher.
Yeah, completely.
Completely.
But yeah, so the major sports that people think about injuries would be football. That's 4 injuries per 1,000 athlete exposures, which is basically every athlete on the team will get injured. That's what football means. Every single athlete.
Yeah, 100%.
For the soccer team, it's half of the athletes will get injured. For the basketball, baseball, volleyball, it's about between 1 in 4 to 1 in 3. Either way, it's a good chunk. So if you're a parent listening or if you're a PT that influences a team, you look at the team and break it up in half. All right, half of you getting injured. And half of those are going to be contact versus non-contact, and then we just kind of dice it up on which ones are the severe and moderate injuries. But that's what we're looking at here is how does strength, power, and reactivity and symmetry relate to those incidents, and can we move the needle, or are we just going to keep talking about it? So I want to be on the move the needle end.
That's the question is if we know the incidence rate, it's fairly frequent. We've known it's been fairly frequent for a long time. And people blame a lot of things, like are the kids playing more sports now, or people are throwing more now, or they're on comp teams and kids are more exposed. I think that's true. I think there's definitely more, but those are considered incident or exposures, is what this study calculated. So exposures have definitely gone up, where you have people playing on multiple teams and playing year-round things and all that stuff. So it's certainly going to increase the opportunity for injury, but the rate, we don't know if it's changed much or not, but it's whatever it is, what it is. That's probably not the only factor, because we see kids that get hurt that don't play a lot of sports. One of the big themes that I've seen, I would say, in my practice in the last 6 months is I have parents coming in saying man, my kid hurt his arm playing baseball, but we're really good about this. We actually really take care of him. We don't pitch every day. We're only on one team. We take 3 months off. We try to do all the things. We do the pitch count thing, and they're still getting injured, right? So is it overuse and like high incident or high exposures more than usual a factor? Maybe. We don't really have that for sure, but people tend to lean on it a lot. But we think there's probably other things. So the question is, what causes that incidence? And for us, can we test these athletes and can we find some common data? Can we find some common trends to be like, hey, we do recognize that per body weight, these guys are not strong enough, or they can generate X number of force per body weight, suggesting that they are strong enough or they're not strong enough. And if we start to track these teams or athletes over a period of time, like 12 to 24 months, can we see that those who got injured had a certain type of test result? Like maybe their force was down, or maybe their explosiveness or elasticity was up, or maybe their asymmetry was one way or the other. And I think that's what we're interested. So we're looking at conducting a very, very large study. We've already tested 1,000 athletes this year. Not all of them will be in the study, but as we kind of move forward, we're looking to kind of continue this journey of let's go out and study high school athletes in these different sports, soccer, football, basketball, you name it, conglomerately, identify what sport they play, of course, and then let's do some basic recordings, put them through a test situation, and then look on tracking them for these long periods of time. So more of a long-term study, looking at thousands of athletes to determine is there a reason for this incidence that we can find? Is there a trending correlation?
I think that trending correlation is critical because if we can answer some really basic questions like how strong should your rotator cuff be to play high school baseball, or how good should the difference between your left multi-jump and your right multi-jump be so that you could play high school soccer. And if you did this now, a high school physical to play high school sports, now we have something to actually look at and say, hey, if you clean up these things, you can go ahead and play competitive sports. Or maybe they do complete it. They do compete in competitive sports, but they have this adjunct. They have a recommendation. They have a supplementary program, which is what we aim to provide. Is let's see if we can kind of clean up these issues and thereby put you on the lower end of this incidence. If you look at any incidence rate, like on average, I'm saying 1 out of 2 athletes. But if you got stronger, maybe you're more out of 1 out of 4. You only have a 25% chance rather than a 50% chance, and that's what I think parents and leaders of communities and athletic directors and coaches should be aiming for. One, it helps you win teams. People who are able to practice consistently and play the games because they're staying healthy tend to win more. So health is a big part of performance, but also health. When people have these more severe injuries, their trajectory in life completely changes. There's more research that show that your likelihood of cardiovascular disease, severe arthritis, dementia, metabolic syndrome, all the really bad stuff that adults have to face, oftentimes can start at a young age with a severe injury that puts you on the wrong path. So doing this is much more than about winning the soccer championship.
That's the why behind it. Is that we do see. You get orthopedically injured at a young age, a couple things happen. You certainly probably become a little bit less active in life. Like you probably don't run as much and you maybe don't play sports. Maybe you don't make it all the way back. So you certainly start to have some of these other issues with weight gain, obesity, eventually cardiovascular disease. We see a lot of that people in their 50s and 60s now that are struggling with that. That process started maybe as an orthopedic injury that was mismanaged early on in their life. So that's a huge passion for us. But if we can even take a step further than orthopedic injury mismanaged, could we reduce the risk of that orthopedic injury in the first place? That's really even a bigger why here that we're trying to solve to. I think there's a huge psychological thing as well that comes in, and we obviously see this in working with athletes where they are on top of the world, they get hurt, and then they're no longer on top of the world. They're really going through a tough time. It's a long process back. It's regardless if it's a major injury, you're looking at probably a year, like in general, of getting back to what you were doing. That's a tremendous amount of time. And then you start to see athletes if they don't feel confident to make it all the way back, or they're not really coached up on it, or just depend on different makeups, whatever they've been told or heard or whatever, they start to do less. So they become fearful in life, where they won't take risks and they don't want to get back to play like, oh, that's unsafe. And then that creates this entire mental approach to their future athletically and to the way they approach their kids in the future, is like, let's not push it. I want to take a risk. Last time I took a risk, I tore my ACL and I got hurt, and it's not worth that risk. It really can change them as a person.
Absolutely. And
that's so detrimental. And obviously there's ways to work with that on the mental health and with sports psychology and such, but it's more than that. If we could avoid the injury in the first place, it would have been a hell of a lot better off,
Yeah.
If they learn, hey, if I work hard and train hard and work on things I'm weak at and be developed into strengths, well, then I learn how to do that as a person.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things I hope for with my son is that if I can teach him to train and work hard and practice his skill set, he'll get better at that skill set, even though he'll never play at an elite level in sport. He learned that if I practice, I get better.
Yep. And this is exactly why, as a sports medicine health professional, there's only a few in this camp. You have great chiropractors, great physical therapists, great athletic trainers. There's only a few that engage with the community in this way, and it's why it's so critical for us to be teammates, so to speak, with the coaches. Because there's no way a coach can do all this, can be mindful of both the players' health and then practice schedule and connect and teach strategy and organize the games and tournaments. They need help. And I know some teams will have assistant coaches or managers to kind of help, corral the troops and pull off the whole sport venture. But as a medical professional, for us to connect as a teammate to the coach and say, let me help you. I think this is what the future should look like. I think every team playing at an elite level, we're just going to call it high school sports in general, they should be having someone with a medical background that connects for the benefit of the player's health and durability and fortification. And that should be the future. If every high school sport had a coach that had a teammate to manage their system, and I don't expect schools to pay for it because these medical people are pretty expensive people.
Well,
but the community can have these people, and that's just a question of the model. How do we connect? How do we collide these people? Because it's beneficial for both the parents and the kids and the athletes growing.
And I think some people might ask the question is, don't we have that now? Don't we have that? We have a team doctor on the sideline. We have an EMT there. Like there's a local PT group that sponsors the team.
Yeah.
Is that good enough?
Yeah. I think there's lots to think right there.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
So to walk you through like the process, like if we're too far away from, if we're like associated with the team, like we're aware there is a team and we sponsor the team, it's certainly part of a regular practice that we do, but that really doesn't engage with the team in a way where we can actually like prevent injuries or actually do something meaningful. And the team physician is a fantastic asset to the team and a very necessary tool. And they're a medical doctor trained mostly in what to do after something bad happens, which is why they're on the sideline and a critical part to that process and the post-care. They could get more involved in the pre-process, but they don't. There's just not a right vehicle for them to do so. So there's been a challenge financially. Like obviously this is why high school teams, at least in California here, aren't quite like Texas and don't have pro-level support systems around them. They could, but then in order to do it, then you have to give those pro people information or time with the team to then like evaluate them and determine strengths, weaknesses, all these different things. So of recently, there's finally some technologies that I think are allowing the data to be received rapidly, to gather it rapidly, receive it rapidly, interpret it rapidly, and then therefore provide some feedback. So we're looking at using tools to go out to a team, take an athlete through a 3 to 5 minute test essentially that requires very little warm up and is not all that strenuous, but at the same time gives us great information about who that athlete is and hopefully identifies their risk factors. And then we can then model that to say, okay, out of these 100 athletes, if we know that 1 and 2 are likely to get hurt, 10% of them being more severe injury, let's identify those 1 out of 10 red flags or those 10 out of 100 red flags of who's showing that and how can we prevent those serious ones from happening. Mm-hmm. Or maybe just become more minor. But if we can get away from the serious stuff, that would be a massive impact to the team and to the community and to those people as a whole, like moving forward.
Absolutely. That's the path. I mean, this is really answering the why. I think, if you kind of go back to a lot of professions, kind of regardless how much money you're making, I think a lot of people get burnout in clinical work, whether it's, working with patients every half hour or every 40 minutes, or, you have so many evals a day. I think the burnout at any level, whether you're, depending on where you're at in the allied healthcare system, is real when you're always feeling like you're just reacting to the next trauma and you kind of forget, why am I even doing this? And I think it's easy to forget, even if you read the words and you have a good mission story and you kind of, I'm here for helping the community. Sometimes you just feel like you're a little bit like swimming in an ocean and you're not sure which way to go. You're not sure keeping your head up. I don't know why I was thinking about that Disney movie that came out of the woman who swam the English Channel. What's her name? Eckhart. No, it's great. It's probably the best Disney movie probably ever made. But
better than Miracle.
Well,
have you ever seen it?
The 1980.
Yeah.
Okay.
That might be the greatest Disney movie. Yeah. Maybe movie period.
Well, I'm thinking of this woman. She tried to cross the English Channel once, failed because her coach sniped her, and then so she went again, and she's gonna be the first woman to ever cross. There's only been like 8 men, and many people have died, and she's swimming literally out to sea and has to keep the right direction. But I think we achieve burnout when we do forget our why, and if we can tie a medical professional to what are we doing this for, this all makes sense. I don't think you get burnout when you constantly are reminded and you're a part of the solution to improve society rather than just treating society.
Yeah, no, that's just one of the downsides of healthcare, is that you kind of get so specialized and so driven into like, this is what you do every day, that, like after doing this for 20 years, when I have a young person walk in, if I see them on crutches and it looks like they have a couple scars on their knee or some tape or the knee's wrapped in an ACE wrap, I pretty much know what we're dealing with, and I can almost answer 90% of the questions beyond the first one. How old are you? What sport were you playing? And was it contact or non? I already know the rest of the answers for the most part just by looking at it, because I've seen it so many times. And so as that type of a person, I'm like, we have to stop this from happening. If I've seen it so many times that I know exactly the mechanism, I know exactly the story, I know exactly how you feel, I know exactly what you're going to tell me about why you can't play, and I know exactly what your doctor said about, what plan looks like on getting back out there. Like, I've done it so many times, it's easy for me. The question becomes, can I stop this process? Mm-hmm. Just like it is in business for us. It's like, man, the same problem keeps showing up over and over again. You can keep patching it.
Yeah.
You can keep trying. Oh, well, just then that problem comes in. This is how we handle it. Let's stop the problem.
Yeah.
Or at least reduce the incidence rate of the problem happening in the first place, so that we don't have this. We don't have to go through this process.
Yeah.
There's a better way, right? Yeah. So we believe there's a better way, and it's something we've been in pursuit of for quite a long time. So we're excited to take some of these steps to learn more and see if we can determine what that better way is.
Yeah. It's going to be a challenge, I think, pulling off this type of longitudinal study with the aim of having 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 athletes in the greater area of Sacramento and Las Vegas and Reno. It's going to be I think it's going to be the biggest challenge we've ever faced, for sure. Right? It's not like there's all these other entities doing it and we just get to model them. We're creating a whole new model of how to do research. Like, okay.
But I think it's really well served. I mean, the motivating factor of the why is so great is that it does impact so many people. Everyone, well, not everyone, but so many people played sports at some point in their life. I don't know what that number is. What's that number, Russ? Do you have any idea? It's got to be like 60 to 80% of people did some sort of recreational sport or activity, in elementary school and into middle school, maybe into high school, and then obviously it drops off significantly. But that influenced a lot of who we are as people, you know? And if you got hurt in high school or below that really shaped who you are to some degree. Mm-hmm. In some ways, a positive way. You overcame some really difficult things. In some cases, maybe you didn't overcome it, and that's led to a lot of demise for a person. So I think the cause is really good, super interesting. I think it's the right group to study. When we're studying elite athletes, we learn a lot from them, and it's amazing. But that's not the average person. Mm-hmm. It's such a small, 1/10 of 1% of the population. Mm-hmm. We're talking about looking at a group that's probably well over 50% of the population, that's recreationally active, that likes to play sports, likes to be there, and we just don't have great data points on them. We talked about this before, that I think there is great data points out there, and I think it's really emerging, and in other areas like the Apple Watch and some of these other tools that, whether it be the Whoop bands or
managing stress, looking at sleep, looking at your cardiovascular health, your pulse ox. I mean, there's a lot of ones that really kind of look at blood and heart rate in really awesome ways. It's hard to get strength, power, symmetry, movement. That's hard to get with a wearable in an automated fashion, which is.
But those variables are massive. We talk about it all the time here. They're like sleep, nutrition, stress management are all massive, and those are available to people now. Where you can get either a Fitbit or a Whoop or an Apple Watch, throw it on, and you're going to have some pretty awesome data within a week or two. Probably 3 or 4 weeks if you're going to go after some of your heart rate stuff, your heart rate variability stuff, but. It's pretty tremendous, and I think there's some really good leading indicators. If you're finding that your heart rate, has a certain resting period, and you see that it goes up 8 to 10 beats a minute in one day, I'll tell you from small levels of experience that I think that the likelihood of you showing up with symptomatics of being ill the next day are very, very high.
Yep.
That your system is already fighting off some sort of virus and illness, and the next day is the day that you're going to see you're going to become symptomatic, and then you're going to know about it.
Yep.
But if you're starting to pay attention to variables like heart rate, you can see that in advance oftentimes.
Yeah, embracing leading indicators is that's the magic sauce. If we can kind of see the issue before it gets really bad.
Yeah, sleep is the same way. If you know that like you're usually getting 7 hours of sleep, which would be good for an adult, 7 hours for a younger person, 9 hours. But if you're getting 7 hours and then you have 2 days in a row where you only get 4. We all know the answer to this question. The odds that you have an illness or something goes wrong on day 3 after 2 days of low light sleep, it's going to be a factor.
Completely.
And you can, if it's not that extreme though, where say you thought you slept, like I was in bed for 8 hours, but I only got 2 quality hours or 3 quality hours. You start seeing that like on your device or on your whatever tool you're using. That's a leading indicator as well. We see lack of quality sleep highly correlated with.
I mean, teaching these is what every young person should. Every 12-year-old should be embracing this. Every 15-year-old should be living this.
It should be PE. It should be PE.
Yeah. EPE.
Learn how to do this in PE.
Oh, PE. This is PE. Yeah.
Learn how to what your heart rate means and what to look for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of good stuff out there. We've seen some good data in this space as far as like lifestyles and benefits. And like I said, those watches are great tools. We just don't have a great movement tool yet, and I'm not sure that we have the answer to it. But we're definitely pursuing the effort to get it. See if we can get something closer, get something better. There definitely seems to be something there. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of what. And now that we can see things with some of the testing equipment we can utilize, like I said, really, really accessible, much more affordable, really, really quick results. It doesn't require a medical professional to take hours of their time to give one athlete information. We can give hundreds of athletes information in less than an hour of time. And I think that's making this very much more practical.
I'm not sure if I have said this to you before because it just came as a thought. But I'm wondering with our research if we should video all of the research and then have AI digest it later. Because I know the AI capability there is present right now. I just don't know exactly how to harness it. So I'm half wondering if,
Well, I fully was counting on you to use AI to look at all the data and find the trend.
Yeah, but if we did like the video, we did like a profile, and I'm like, and see like, for instance, like measure dynamic Q angle with multi-hop, does that increase as your symmetry score increases? Something like that.
Yeah.
So I was half thinking because it'd be a little difficult to obviously do that type of data analysis.
Well, we have quite a bit of that lab data over, when I say we, meaning like the world has that kind of data over the last 15 years where we have unbelievable biomechanical labs, unbelievable 3D motion capture labs with force plates and all of these tools.
Right.
And we still have yet to see great correlations come out of those
I know. That's why
I think it's because they're a little bit too lab oriented. And the sample sizes are quite small. I think we need to be looking at much larger groups.
That's right.
And then tracking injury rates. And usually these biomechanical labs, they're trying to create models.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if I see this on the force plates and I see this biomechanical model, they make assumptions, but they're not able to test large bodies of people over a period of time, or they're able to, but they don't. So we're missing the trending. Like, hey, if you scored this relative to your body weight, relative to your sport, your risk goes up 10%.
I know. I was fast forwarding 3 years from now after we've tested 4,000 athletes, 6 different times. I was thinking like, if only we would have done that one little thing. That's
I think it's an interesting idea, but I think that what we've seen is to move away from this concept that a movement model, as far as like a quality of movement model, like how well do you squat? How well? Who says it's good or bad, right? How do you squat? How do you jump? How do you run? Excellence or low injury risk has become less and less associated with doing it in a certain way. As far as what we see in the world, we see people do stuff that's kind of funky, and they still make it to elite levels. And you're like, that really biomechanically doesn't make sense. It just shouldn't be possible. But yet there they are.
I know. The other thing that clouds my brain is when you're 14 and you're a boy, you're about to grow a ton, and you might move a little awkward for the next 2 years.
Totally.
And how much does that awkward changing lead to your incidence? Does your incidence go up if you play a lot of sports during the change?
Oh, for sure.
So how that, obviously we're talking about a lot of, what are all the variations, what are all those things that kind of correlate that make that incidence number, and it inflates it. And while it's being inflated, are the things to reduce the damage that everyone has to grow. Do you hyper supplement collagen and do a lot of balance exercises during growth? I don't know. Or do posterior line movement patterns to mitigate the fascial stress of all the boys. It doesn't really happen to girls, but it's like all the boys. They just all of a sudden can't touch their toes at age 15, but then at 17 they can. Are they more likely to hurt their knees for those that can't touch their toes during that phase? If we just took a sample
size of your patients, we'd already have proven that solution.
I know.
Anyone that sees us between the ages of 14 and 17-year-old male has a posterior line intensive
like, oh man, what happened here?
And they all end up doing quite well. It's quite a journey that they go through.
But those are all the little things in my brain. It's like, we're looking at this battery. I'm just wondering, is there anything else to do with these 4,000 kids?
Yeah, it's a super good question. Yeah. Well, we're open to ideas. So you guys out there listening have some feedback, some contributions. We'd love to hear them, because this is going to be something that we've been working on for quite a while. Really just putting into the formal phases to actually implement and execute. But probably one of the largest studies on youth athletics ever done, and the data that we'll receive from it, I think will be tremendous in formulating how do we take care of our kids, take care of our athletes. Take care of these folks moving forward. Mm-hmm. How do we have a lasting impact on the future of how we train and prepare for sports, as well as how it sets people up for the future of their life. So
absolutely.
So look forward to that. Be happy to have you a part of it. So you have any thoughts, feedback, concerns, comments? Please share them with us. We'd love to discuss and have you weigh in. So thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys on the next one.